we're really looking at too all the timeline, and that's what I want to talk to you about next. In the Maya Learning program that we have, and hopefully all of you have been in Maya Learning at this point and you know about it, it's the platform that we use for all of the college work. So everything gets uploaded here and everything gets sent through Maya Learning. Your students list is in Maya Learning. You can see all the deadlines, whether the college requires supplements. You can see if they're early action or early decision. There's also lots of resources in there. So please play around in Maya Learning and use that to its full extent. You also have an unofficial copy of the transcript. So if you ever need that, at some point where a college is saying they need an unofficial copy of something, it's right in Maya Learning and you can upload that. We will send the official transcript, and that's what most colleges need, but in case you should need it, it is right there. I will say it's really important for students and families to have this organizational system. For those of you who have students in the boarding school, they're pretty organized. You'd be really proud, I think, to see your senior, because they get themselves going every day. They get their assignments in and they're doing really well. And I've been really proud to see like how much they're staying on track with things. And at Dunn, there really is a nice net underneath them as well. So if a deadline is being missed, like someone's going to be on them and talking to them about that. I can't file an application for them, but like they know that I'm going to nag them and make sure that things are happening. But as a parent, if you feel like nervous about something, you're like, I don't know if I know what's happening, please just, let me know, send me an email, and I can follow up with your student as well. But I want you to like think about the calendar and have a conversation with your student. Let them know what your expectations are in terms of when they're filing applications and things like that. I think it's really healthy to pick one day a week that you're going to talk about the college stuff, right? What do we have to do for the coming week? What's been done already? And for students, I always think that you have kind of an idea sometimes in your head of how you're going to do things, but you don't always verbalize that to your parents. And then they get nervous because they think you're going to miss something. So please be sure that you keep your parents in the loop. Set a time on Sunday morning or whatever it is you want and say, this is the time that we're going to go through what needs to get done. And if you don't do that, it's just going to bleed into every single conversation. So, and as a student, you can say, listen, mom, dad, we're going to talk about that on Sunday. Right now, I've got to do my calculus homework. So I can't focus on that right now. So kids are busy. Let's make sure that they have the space to do the things they want to do, but also are keeping you abreast of what's happening. Save logins, be organized. So I tell you. I want to make sure everyone knows about what is going to colleges. All right. So we are going to send your transcript. Right now, what's on there are just is everything you've done up to this point. If you've transferred to Dunn, we also send your transfer transcript. And we have your senior courses listed there, but we don't have grades yet. But by the third Monday of November, we will have grades. And those are the transcripts that are going to be sent to college. And we send those for if you've applied early to a college by November 1st, we're going to send out that transcript, the updated one with your new grades from first trimester. So all that to say, I'm sure you're going to do really, really well this trimester. So please keep that in mind and know that colleges they want to see the courses you're taking, but they also want to see how you're doing in those classes. And that's the time for colleges when they're often going into committee decisions. So we want to give them new information. That's awesome. Second and third trimester grades are also important, especially if you end up deferred into the regular admission pool, or if you end up on a wait list. This is when we've got good information to share with them. And remember that all offers of admission are conditional, meaning that they expect to see the same level of work throughout the senior year. So if we see that those grades have dropped, that's not going to bode well for you. So we want to keep a strong senior year all the way through. You can have fun next year. Yay. All right, this is just, I'm going to briefly go through just to understand what roles are in this, that the student is the one that's controlling the list basically and where they apply and things like that. Parents are the ones that are really providing that organizational support, the financial support, and the emotional support, and also completing the financial aid documents, the CSS profile, the FAFSA, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I want students to really understand that this is their process and they're the ones that need to own this and keep track of things. Parents can be great at really helping to provide some organizational support, but it's really difficult when if I'm talking to a student and they say, I don't know where I applied. I'm like, what? How do you not know that information? Right. So this is your list of colleges. Parents obviously are weighing in and paying the application fees most likely, but students are the ones that are really managing all of that. And then you see the things that we do. We're helping to develop that list and make recommendations for the application timeline. We're giving them feedback on essays. We're writing the counselor letter of recommendation. And that's the story of who the student is within the Dunn community, right? What kind of impact do they have here? The other recommendations, the academic recommendations, are written by the teachers, not the advisor, not the coach. These are academic recommendations that I write the bigger recommendation around that counselor recommendation. We submit all the materials to the colleges, and then we advise, advocate, provide support, nag, all those things, and then are here for you as parents as well to make sure that you feel comfortable with all the things that are happening too. Just a little thing about what we think about this list. Our recommendation is that the list needs to be reasonable. It is a lot of work to do these well, and we want to make sure students aren't just applying without real thought behind an application. I think generally from what I'm seeing with the students at this point, they're definitely being very thoughtful and they're understanding the work that goes into that. And I think as a parent, I think it's helpful to kind of protect them in this process. They often will run into family, friends, and aunts and uncles who say, "Oh, but you should think about this place, or you should apply here," and that may be helpful information. But sometimes it starts to be overwhelming sometimes for young people because they really have done some research at this point. They've visited some schools and they feel like they know kind of where they are. So we want to continue to support them in that list generation, list development. Their list will have reach schools and target schools, or we could say target or possible, as well as likely schools. And it's very important to have that balanced list. And for financial reasons, because we want to have a variety of options that are going to come our way financially. Some merit scholarship money that may come from those likely and target schools. And we want to have our reach schools. I want students to dream and to, pick the schools that they also really love. Like I want to have a variety of schools in there, but I want them to love those likely schools and target schools just as much. I want that fit to be there, that all these schools fit them socially and academically and financially. So thoughtful, personal, yes. And then we want to submit that there's strategy behind early decision and early action and restricted early action. This is what I'm here for, is to help provide guidance on that and to give us our best possible pathway through. We can talk about standardized testing. Just understand that this is very personal for each student. And when we do our individual meeting, we'll talk about whether a student is going to send test scores or not. And there's some strategy involved there as well in terms of which schools we want to send test scores to. Demonstrated interest may come into play with certain schools. So I want students to understand that they are building a relationship with this institution. They're learning about this place. And we want them to have that, to understand that understanding the fit of each place is also really important. In the early applications, yes, we will we'll talk some strategy individually in our meetings. Remember that more applications doesn't mean more offers of admission. And if you look at the data, it is really, really compelling because you see that the chance of admission actually goes down with the number of applications that they file, mainly because it's really hard to do that number of applications well. Most students here, we usually hit between 8 and 10 on average. There's an occasional one that will go bigger than that, but that's generally where we are. Some apply to 1 or 2 and they're done. And that works well for them too. But as a family, we'll be talking about that and thinking about what's best for your sons and daughters. So on Thursday, October 28th, 7 o'clock, college funding night, we'll talk about the FAFSA, the CSS profile, the Cal grant, which is a grant here in California for our California residents. We'll talk about need-based aid versus merit-based aid, and also thinking about the list of colleges and how that might yield money from a merit-based money from certain colleges. I want to point out too that the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA. All right, so that form is typically available on October 1st. This year it has been delayed until December 1st. And colleges are, trying to figure out how they're going to be dealing with that. You should know that it may change in some cases how that when you receive those financial aid awards, depending on the school. But generally, I want you to think about if your sons and daughters or if your family is applying for financial aid, we want to think about their deadline for application as a similar deadline for what you are filing for your paperwork for financial aid. So if you line those up, we should be in pretty good shape. And again, on college funding night, this is on Zoom, and you can join from the comfort of your home. And we'll have a lot of fun talking about how to file all those fun forms. I want to give you a general timeline of things. I won't go through all of it, but this is recorded. You can watch it back at your leisure. But right now, we have a lot of college reps who are visiting us during the day, during the school day, and students are permitted to miss class to come and meet with those reps. So we really encourage them to do that. The full list is in their Maya Learning account, and it's also in the college counseling calendar at Dunn. So you can click on the day and you can see which schools are visiting that day. Students just need to ask permission if they're going to be missing class. They need to talk to their teacher the day before and ask if they can miss class. And those reps that are coming to visit are the ones that are most likely going to be reading their application. So it can be a really nice way to make that connection. Students are meeting with me. We're talking about their applications. We're finalizing resumes and essays. And we also have class during seminar. We had class today. And going through today, we talked a lot about some financial aid things and understanding that process. What else? We have our college counseling class will also be happening in October. On October 11th is also our UC workshop. So the folks from UC Santa Barbara will be coming up to campus and walking students through the University of California application line by line, so they get it all pretty, and talking to them about their personal insight questions, which are what the UC requires in terms of an essay. Fall break, that's the 9th and 10th of October. If you have a chance to visit some colleges, it's a great idea. So even if it's something local around where you live, whatever, I think it's a fun time to do that. In rest of October, we'll be doing lots more meetings. We'll be talking about the CSS profile, and I'm here to help if you have questions around those applications for financial aid. If your student is applying to the University of Texas at Austin, the University of Michigan, or the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, the first deadline is going to be mid-October, usually around October 15th. And they sometimes will tell you this, and sometimes it's like University of Michigan just expects that you better not file that on the deadline of November 1st. These are the three big ones that will really want that application by October 15th. Right now, we have a couple in the mix. I think for UT Austin is one we'll see, but I want those applications in early, and I will drive that point home. as well. Everything else, if they're applying early, November 1st is the deadline. I like to shoot for, a week or so earlier than that, just to give us a little bit of space. But that is the deadline, November 1st. Some have a November 15th deadline as well. Some schools will ask students to schedule interviews, and I think this is something that students need to be on at this point, like looking at the website. Usually the college will let them know, but sometimes they just expect that the student will reach out. So it's easy to Google, does Boston University require an interview? And if it says yes, then we need to make sure we get that scheduled. They're often on Zoom, or if the rep is in the area, they may be able to do an in-person interview. Some schools also use alumni to do interviews, and they will be letting you know how to set those up. In November, your final list is due to me, so that we're getting ready for anything that's coming for regular decision. We have the UCCSU application. We have Thanksgiving break. That's when I send out your lovely first trimester grades. And let's see, in December, we file the FAFSA if we're applying for financial aid. And, ooh, here's the big one, December 15th generally is around the day when any early applications, that's when the decision comes back. So I maybe filed the application November 1st, and now it's December 15th, and I have a decision. Awesome. And I'm sure we will have lots of good news. Then we will have our winter break. And if the student still is applying for school's regular decision, often that first deadline is January 1st or January 15th. So we need to plan appropriately for that break. So sometimes families say, oh, we want to do this great vacation. We want to go somewhere. And it's important to know that your sons and daughters may need to work on some college applications during that time. It may be just fine tuning a few things for regular decision, but if we're in a far-flung place with no internet, that's probably not a great decision at that point. We'll also be doing any financial aid for regular decision applications at that time, scheduling any interviews. This is often the time when the like scholarship searches ramp up. And we'll be talking about that during that college funding night. Generally, I like to look at those local scholarships. The Santa Barbara Foundation can be a great place to start for local students. And then there's a number of resources in Maya Learning for scholarships, as well as some that we'll talk about at college funding night as well. February is the Cal Grant deadline. We will nag your child for quite some time. If they're a local student in California, we do want them to file the Cal Grant. And we start to get decisions back in March from these regular decision schools. We have a midwinter break. We have other breaks going on, February, March, April. We want you to use that time to maybe visit some colleges as you're starting to make those decisions about where your student may go to college. We also have spring break in April. Now, every college they have to release their decisions by April 1st. So all of this leads up to that April 1st deadline. And at that point, we will then be able to, I'm just going to go back a little bit. That's when we will know all of the decisions, all the financial aid, all those things will come to us by April 1st. And then we have until May 1st to decide which one college you will send a deposit to, which one is going to be lucky enough to get you. So this is sort of the overall timeline. I'm here to meet with you throughout all of that. We also have, if there's a wait list that happens, those usually start to move sometime later in May and June. And then we have graduation. Yay. And there we have it. Now, a couple things that I want to point out too. The last one, this year goes by very fast. And I don't want to spend so much time thinking about all this stuff. We miss the joy of senior year and your time to celebrate all the things and do all the things together of the senior year. So I know it can be, there's a lot of different moving pieces here. But if we can really find time once a week to focus on it and not let it take over everything, I think you'll find it's going to be a lot more manageable and healthy for your family. And the different things to say here, like we're here to help. Please reach out if you need something. Be prepared for maybe, which means wait lists are part of the process, as are a defer to regular decision. Things like that it's normal for those things to happen. We often prepare ourselves for yes or no, like admit or deny. And I don't even know that we prepare ourselves so well for deny, but we prepare ourselves as best we can. But then if a student is deferred into regular admission, or if they're waitlisted, there's a different sort of way to navigate that. And I just want us to make sure that we know that that's common. And let's see, you're going to probably you'll get reminders from colleges, because the minute that your student submits their application, there's usually an auto-generated response from the college saying, thank you for applying. We're missing your transcript and your letters of recommendation and all these things. It drives us all crazy on the high school side, because we know that that's there. It just has to take a few days to get matched up. But in that time, you might see that you'll be getting those emails. Totally normal. Give it a couple of days and you'll see that there'll be a portal that your student has at each college. They can go in and check and make sure everything's there. And if there's ever anything that you're worried about, just let me know, because I want to check on our end and make sure that everything's fully there and that we're all ready to go. And I can easily follow up with the college if there's ever a question about anything. All right, let's see. I'm going to stop sharing at this point and just see if we have any. There may be some questions. I kind of want to hold those probably till the end, just because any of this nuts and bolts stuff, I will be happy to answer for you. But I do want to give Matt some time to tell you about all the really important things that are going on that have nothing to do with I would say, the kind of the minutia of this. Because so I've known Matt for quite a number of years now, and what I really enjoy about working with him is that he keeps it real. He's been part of this admissions world for a long time. Went to Bowdoin College, got his graduate degree at Harvard. He's worked at Tufts in admissions. He's worked at Lafayette College. He's at Trinity University, but he also understands the independent school world too, and boarding school world, having been at places like Northfield, Mount Herman. I know there's another one in the mix there too, but he knows this world and has been around it a long time. And I think has a real appreciation for what students are heading into, as well as parents. And when if I'm thinking like, oh my goodness, like I don't like what's going to happen with this new financial aid thing or whatever, like Matt is always the thought leader here. He's sort of that touchstone that you have that you go, okay, like if I know that Matt's got this covered, I'm good. So, and I'm going to leave that to you, Matt. Is there anything else you want me to say before you jump in here?
No, Terry, you're good. Really appreciate this opportunity on many fronts. But I'm going to pick up sort of a thread that you sort of wove into the final couple minutes of your remarks. A really important word that you used that I fear too often is getting lost in all the frenetic, unproductive energy that swirls around this whole endeavor of searching for and applying to college. And that word is joy. Let's think about the reality of a 17-ish-year-old. In my mind, it's such an awesome moment in time when they are these emerging young adults who should be full of joy and playfulness and excitement. But I fear too often young people and their supporting casts get beat down by the grind of trying to get into college. And, that makes me a little bit sad. I was heartened to see your email, it might have been last night or earlier today, when you just shared some really positive, thoughtful reflection on the Dunn community. It's not often I step into a space like this with, a fantastic, college counseling guru saying, listen, these families they're positive, they're energized, they're realistic, they have a calm about them. That's rare, especially when I engage in a lot of high schools in the Northeast. So quite honestly, like I feel like I can sit here and take a deep breath and enjoy a couple of minutes with you, sharing some thoughts on this landscape that I call home professionally. In this era of strategic enrollment management, I feel like we've lost the humanity out of this work, unfortunately. But there are those of us in the mix, Terry and Ed, chief among them, who always want to keep this, the young people and their health and well-being at the heart of the work that we do. So yeah, this landscape of seeking college acceptance is it can be very busy and overwhelming. It can be massively time consuming and hugely sort of disconcerting and anxiety producing if you let it. But I invite you right now not to let it. Take a deep breath and recognize that you have one of the very best college counselors in the land, helping guide and shape this moment in time. So I do want to add, depth to your awareness of this landscape for sure. And I'll let your questions sort of guide me in the way that you want to go in just a little bit. But I want to start with a couple of facts to begin this conversation. And then ultimately I'll dive into some of the detail of how we receive your applications and what we do with them. But the first fact, actually, Terry, what's, if you don't mind sharing, what's the college going rate at Dunn?
Everybody's going to college.
Yeah. So relax. If you want to go to college, you're going to college. So take a deep breath and relax. I think that's the first fact. You're going to college. And in fact, I'm looking, I see a handful of what looks like 17-ish-year-olds in there. You're going to be moving into college in about 338 days from today. So, a point that Terry made is like, this year is not going to slow down. In fact, it's just going to speed up. So I invite you to sort of live and embrace each and every day, with intentionality, with excitement. You get to be a senior in high school once. Enjoy it. Don't become overwhelmed by this whole endeavor. And I guess I want to provide some cover fire, because sometimes that stress and anxiety comes from the adult hangers-on in this space, the parents and guardians who might be a little too invested in trying to, do everything they can to empower, support their young people. I get it. I'm a parent of a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. I would lay down in traffic for them to get them whatever they want. And sometimes parents overplay their hand and don't have a real understanding of this moment in time, and they bring their lens to bear, which can be, quite honestly, unproductive. So another fact that I need to remind the adults in this space: it is not 1989. We're not in the 1900s. We're in a different millennium. So when you were approaching this whole effort of applying to college, if you went or if you applied, like, times have changed. So thinking about the landscape and what just forget about it. There are colleges out there that when we in the 1980s and 90s were applying to college, that were essentially open enrollment. I'm thinking about Northeastern University in Boston. So in the 1980s, that was just a handful of years away from being a night school in the basement of a YMCA. Okay, but right now, Terry, what was Northeastern's admit rate last year?
Oh, I think it's early decision or nothing. Let's
Or
put it
nothing?
that way.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Yeah. But in regular decision, you're probably at 10%. I mean, whatever. It's
Yeah,
below 20 for
it's
sure.
well, it's I think it was 7% last year, and
Yeah.
now Northeastern will admit you, but like, we're going to admit you to a campus in California or admit you to a campus in the UK, and then maybe you'll get to Boston. So like, my point here is, like, times have changed, and just let go of what you think about this landscape and what's real and what's not. And trust your young people to sort of find those fits and matches and allow them to do that. I guess I'll provide some more cover fire for the young people here. I want them to explore, to get excited about colleges they've never heard of, and hoping that their supporting cast get excited as well. I'm hoping that parents and guardians in this mix, get to know colleges they've never heard of before. And the reaction is like, awesome, I've never heard of this place before. It must be in your list for a reason. I can't wait to get to know it, as opposed to, what's this college doing here? Never heard of it. Like, you should be careful how you comport yourself here, because you don't know what your young people are gonna get fired up about. And just to sort of acknowledge another fact that, that teenage brain rolling around in the head of these young people, like, not fully formed. It is not fully mature. Not to say it's not powerful, because it is, but it's important to recognize that the last part of the brain to fully develop and mature, which doesn't happen till mid 20s for the young women in the audience, late 20s for the boys, if not later. Looking at you, Ed Divine. The last part of the brain to fully develop is the prefrontal cortex that empowers young people to think and act in long-term ways. And the very last thing that happens is the myelination of the neurons that connects parts of the brain together. So to ask a 17, 18-year-old, what do you want to go to college for? What do you want to major in? What do you want to do after college? What kind of jobs do you want? Like, those questions are massively unfair for the teenage brain. So, that brain has a hard enough time thinking about tomorrow, let alone 1,000 tomorrows from now. So, it's just important to let these young people be the visceral beings they are, and to sort of react and interact, in a more visceral way, and not be able to articulate exactly what they want, why they want it, and how they feel about things. So just, let that happen. And just remember, you were sort of that age once, and just to give them the space they need to really embrace this moment in time. And together acknowledge another fact. I love my job for lots of reasons. Chief among them, it's a human endeavor. It's about people. It's about crafting a class and creating a community very intentionally. But just because this is a human endeavor, selective college admissions is not humane. There's nothing fair about it. So just let go of the idea that it's fair. I want to make it as humane as possible by leading with transparency in helping families and young people understand, how this actually works. But just understand that this is not a meritocracy based on achievement academically. So that, this idea that, listen, I've worked so hard, I've achieved so well, like I deserve this. Like, no, you don't. Like, if you're applying to really selective places, you're rolling the dice, and there's nothing fair about some of these choices that are being made. So, own that fact together. And then this is one that, I want it sort of to sort of drive home a little bit. So another fact, searching for and applying to college is not a process to be endured. And I think too often, students and families approach this as hoops that need to be jumped through, as boxes that need to be checked, and you make it about outcomes. You make it about getting into college. And it's this experience you have to endure to get there. So you can make it that if you want, and this will be nothing but stressful for the next 350 days. But I would encourage you to think this more as a rite of passage moment, and an experience that's to be celebrated. This is an awesome time for a 17-ish-year-old to sort of get comfortable taking a good hard look in the mirror, saying, "What's my deal? What's my story? What matters to me as a student, as a scholar, as an artist, as an athlete, as an activist, as whatever identities you claim. Like, what's up and why is it up?" That introspection, it doesn't happen regularly or often enough. And I think, the teenage species, especially, the American version of it, is so busy and programmed, and engaged academically, co-curricularly, extracurricularly, socially, with your families and your community. You don't have many quiet moments. And when you do have those quiet moments, these fill in the blank things come out. I'm holding up my phone right here. And then you get sucked right back in. And you're resistant to take the time to take a breath and be thoughtful and reflective about you. So I would love for you all, as you're sort of stepping into the last, quarter of your college search experience, and it sounds like you're all in great shape and accomplished so much. That's fantastic. But as you're finalizing, your responses to short answer questions, to supplements, finalizing your personal statement, if you're still working on that, like, get comfortable being in your own head and thinking about who you are and what matters to you, and the lens that you're looking through at this world. The idealist to me likes to think that this whole endeavor, it's not about getting into college. Like I said, it's more about you becoming more aware that you have a voice, you have a presence on this earth that's distinctly yours. And through this experience, I like to think that you understand that you are shaping that reality, that voice, and that presence each and every day with the choices that you make. So you're gaining agency over your life. And this is a big moment, for a long time through your first 17-ish years. My sense is you've had a lot of people helping you make choices. That handhold, that kick in the pants is very immediate. Well, this might be the first time this is on you to sort of make good choices and to begin to get comfortable trusting yourself. allowing your head and your heart to come together and be guided by that, in trusting your instincts. So that's what I think this experience is about. It's about getting comfortable, being introspective, becoming more aware of who you are and what matters to you, owning your presence with pride and confidence, and celebrating it. This is an excellent time to put a stake in the ground and say, hey, I'm awesome. I'm excited about me and what my deal is. Not in a haughty way, but in a way that just shows pride, it shows confidence, it shows excitement. I mean, again, there's people on the other side of this that are excited about you. And we're not looking for products to college fitting in a box. We know sort of you at 17, 18, it's a little bit messy and squishy and hard to know. But that's the fun part for us. And I know that some of the anxiety and stress that exists around this whole effort has to do with the fact that through it, you do need to boil yourself down into bits and bytes of memory that fit in my phone. I can access my whole applicant pool right here. And last year at Trinity College, that was 6,518 candidates from 138 different countries in all 50 states in my phone, in my pocket. Now, I know the enormity of a young person can't fit in there. And I know that's massively uncomfortable to think that, like, wait, I'm going to fit in some dude's phone in his pocket? That's gross. But, it's my job and the job of my teammates to pull you out of these devices and say, hey, this kid is awesome for fill in the blank college. Let me tell you why. And that's the opportunity at hand as you're sort of rolling deeper into your senior year, finalizing sort of your college list and thinking about applying, sharing bits and pieces of you via this vehicle of a common app. We know there's nothing common about you, but that's the medium that you have to share sort of little nuggets of your reality. You can't fit it all in there, but understand that it's our job to make massive assumptions based on incomplete information. You're giving us those bits and pieces, and we weave them together into what we think is your story, trying to gain vision for you as an engaged, involved, maybe even inspired member of our community. But you need to help inform those assumptions that we're going to make. So as I think about, what you might want to know once you sort of click submit and that application zooms off into our space, like what happens with that? How you read an application? So I'll share just a couple of thoughts there, and then share, some words on sort of the financial aid and affordability front, and then would love to answer your questions. But essentially, when a student honors us with their application, I start there. We are honored by your interest, and every college should feel that. We're going to take a dive in, and we're going to start with, how you've achieved academically. We're going to start with your data, and I would argue that of the places that I've worked in higher education, at Tufts University, at Lafayette College, and now at Trinity College, I would say that 80 to 90% of our candidates are highly admissible. They're capable academically. We could admit them very comfortably, but we're not admitting 80 to 90% of our candidates. At Trinity this past year was about a third of our candidates, which makes us highly selective, but still we're still admitting a lot of students. So, you have that 80 to 90% that are admissible, and then a good portion of those admissible candidates based on the data are competitive. Okay. So that means they have a transcript that shows really excellent rigor. And we're looking at rigor of program in a local context. I'm not taking a student from Dunn and putting them next to a student from, Conard High School right over here in my neighborhood. Two very different, a well-resourced public school, a well-resourced independent school, but very different. So I'm not putting those two transcripts. We're like, all right, who's more rigorous? Like, we're reading the local context. So based on what a student has opportunity to absorb at Dunn, how have they challenged themselves? What's the rigor of that program? And how they've achieved. That's sort of the data in the mix. If there's testing, awesome. Happy to see that. More and more colleges like us are optional. And a quick aside here, what you do filling out dots for 3.5 hours of your life on a Saturday morning has no bearing on how awesome you are. So please don't append any kind of self-worth to the testing. If you're proud of it, share it with us. We'll be psyched to see it. If you're not, then don't worry about it. So that factors into the data to a point. But, a lot of that will blend together and say, this is a competitive candidate. That not only are they capable, they're competitive. Well, even then, I would say that's probably 50 to 60% of our applicant pools are competitive. So then we're looking to see, well, who's compelling? So from capable to competitive to compelling. And the compelling is when we get beyond the data. It's when we get beyond your transcript and your testing. It's when we try to get into, again, your voice, your presence, your style, that energy you have to lean into life and learning with the right kind of attitude and openness and excitement. We're trying to gauge all of that. And again, hard to know, like, well, how do you do that? Because it is, relatively, I think I've used the word squishy already, but it sort of is. It's a little bit messy because you were getting well beyond the transcript, and we're getting into, how you put your voice into this application, your personal statement, your optional responses to supplemental questions. We're also paying a lot of attention at colleges like mine to what your counselor has to share, and how you've surfaced and emerged in a community at Dunn. Who are you in that space? I'm really curious about that. And then, your teachers, they know you in the way that we want to know you and give us a real sense of the verve you have intellectually, and the willingness you have to sort of take part in have an active life of the mind in a way that is compelling and interesting and exciting. So, that's where, I really want students to not just hang their hat on what I call the what. It's very easy for me to know what your what is. Okay. I know what country you're from. I know what city or state you live in. I know what school you go to. I know what classes that you take. I know what you've achieved in those classes. I know what you're involved in co-curricularly, what you're involved in extracurricularly. I have a sense of what your energy is socially. I know what your deals at home for the most part. The what is very, we grab onto that, and that's great. We can make a lot of offers, based on the what. It's a compelling kid, done beautifully academically. They're super involved. Awesome, bring it on. But the most compelling candidates are the ones who give us the how and the why behind the what. So by that, I mean, let's remember, I said we make a lot of assumptions based on incomplete information. And one of the most important things that I think my teammates and I do in assessing the energy and viability and vitality of a candidate is thinking about how they spend their time. You have, in my mind, time is your currency as a young person. How are you investing it? Certainly in the classroom, but I'm thinking, even more importantly, beyond the classroom. How are you exploring your interests, on any front? And what are you learning from them? And how are you surfacing as a member of the communities you're a part of? What identities do you claim? And how are you exploring those? How open are you to engage in exploring the identities of other people? Are all these things, measured on a transcript? No. We're looking at, how are you involving yourself in the world and engaging in it? And what's, how are you expressing that to us? Because again, we're making assumptions. So let's actually, are there any students in here that want to be put on the spot? If you do, I'm gonna give you 8.5 seconds to pop off a mic and say, I'm in. Who wants to be put on the I won't make it uncomfortable, I hope. Any takers?
I'll be put on the spot.
Yes, Matthew, you're doing our namesake proud. So Matthew, you are a senior in high school.
Yep.
Okay. What are some things, academically that are sort of really interesting and exciting to you now? Knowing you're not claiming this for the rest of your life, but at this moment, what's really interesting to you academically?
It's hard for me to narrow that down to one subject, but I've really become interested in math in the past over the past summer.
Okay, math. And if you don't mind me asking, what math are you taking as a senior?
BC calculus.
Oh man, have fun with that. I'm not a math person. Awesome. Okay, good for you. Well, hang in there and stay on top of it, because I've seen BC Cal kick you in the teeth if you're not careful. So,
Yeah.
So math, you're leaning into this. Okay, so math is surfacing as being a real interest to you. How about beyond the classroom? What are a couple things that are that are really important to you that you might claim sort of helps identify who you are in the Dunn community?
I really have a passion for music. I love music.
Nice.
Favorite things to do.
Yeah.
And I also have a passion for investing in personal finance. So
Okay.
I had a job the past year and worked a lot and invested my own money, just kind of stuff like that in terms of wealth creation and management.
Wow, awesome. Okay. Music wise, what are you playing? What are you singing? What are you doing?
I taught myself how to play piano when I was a freshman, and then I learned how to play bass last year, so I just kind of experiment with lots of different things and like to play jazz. It's my favorite.
Nice. All right. And what is it about the markets that draw you in to sort of think about like actually spending your time as a 18-ish year old being like, huh, this is fascinating because like I don't get it. Like what is it about that draws
Like
you in?
finance to me was always a vehicle towards developing financial freedom. So I kind of had this realization 2 summers ago that there are other ways towards building the kind of life that I want. And so I turned towards what are ways that I can smartly or intelligently allocate my money to get the best returns. And then specifically with investing in public markets, it gives you the opportunity to understand companies and what they do to kind of provide a product and a service. And it's an opportunity to kind of understand macroeconomic conditions and the influence they have on markets, as well as how companies operate.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, it's funny. A quick aside. I met a bunch of students in our investment club this past spring, and our investment club at Trinity manages a portion of our endowment. They have about $1 million that they are responsible for out of a near $1 billion endowment. And I love the fact that our students outperformed our our fund managers this past year, which I thought was super cool. Anyway,
That's awesome.
thank you for this. All right, so Matt, a you are a self-taught musician who has developed a real keen interest and maybe even some instincts as sort of in the space of finance, and you love math. That's what you are. You're a math-loving finance guy who self-taught piano at 15. That's what you are. Well, how and why have you become that? You don't have to answer that now, but I'm hoping in your application you add some depth, you add some dimension to these things, because like I said, I'm gonna make a lot of assumptions. Right now, if you are sharing that you are a self-taught musician who's picked up the piano, which is what 88 keys. I look at that piano in my house like I don't get it, but there was something about you that made you sit down and be like, I want to figure this thing out. And then that sort of evolved into an interest in the bass and developed a real interest in maybe jazz and other like that's awesome. What assumptions am I going to make there? Well, I'm going to assume that you're motivated. You're patient. You take the time to learn and aren't afraid to sort of figure things out on your own. It's not a lot of 17-ish year olds that sort of try to figure out the market and how to sort of maximize returns on an investment. That's awesome. And so that's, again, speaking to this kid's motivated. He's not afraid to take some chances. And likely he's very responsible and thoughtful and deliberate about the choices that he makes. Certainly when it comes to investing your money, but I'm going to extrapolate that out and say like, this is probably someone who is responsible and thoughtful in the choices they make. He recognizes there's gravity in decision making and he takes them seriously. And then, someone who's like stepping into BC Calc and says, I like BC Calc, like, oh, like, what's that? My guess is that blend of an emerging mathematical mind who's self-taught music and is interested in the markets, like there's a really cool story to be told there, and it's real and it's yours. It's distinctly yours. But through your application, you got to give us some depth and some meat to chew on well beyond the what. So, my belabored point here is think about the how and the why and the bits and pieces of your story and anecdotes you can share that allow someone like me to weave together the story and inform the assumptions that we're making. So, Matt, those are all assumptions I'm making about you. I don't know if they're true, but that's where, those of us who read your application are going to start. And then, if you give us just a couple of nuggets to grab onto, like we're going to take it and run with it. And then, Terry and her counselor rec and your teachers are going to sort of round out a picture of you that's going to make us be like, damn, this kid, like he's moving and shaking. He's got a lot to offer our community. So, again, recognize that, people that do the work that I do, that Ed does, we're leading as your champions and your advocates. But you need to give us the fodder we need to celebrate you. And that's what this common application, beyond the data is about. Think about what we're looking for. I can't pinpoint any one thing. We want a balanced community full of all different kinds of energy and talents and excitement and experiences. But I can assure you now more than ever, you're darn right, we're looking for students who who lead with care and interest in themselves, but also have an openness and a desire to know other people, and maybe have a degree of empathy and interest, and are looking to build consensus and connection and care in a community. All of us are looking for those students. Well, how do you find a student who leads with empathy and cares about other people? Like, again, we're not going to find that in a transcript. And that's why, like I said about 28 minutes ago, this is not a meritocracy based on achievement academically. We can assign merit to whatever the heck we want. That's why this job is fun. So, this is, there's a lot to grab onto and to think about, based on what Terry had to share and my sort of blah, blah, blah. Like, there's a lot sort of there, like, what'd that guy say? To boil it down into sort of a bottom line is bring thoughtfulness and energy into this. Like I said, it's a human endeavor, and there are humans on the other side of this who want to grab onto it, and to celebrate you. So have fun with it. We can tell when that's happened. So, I'll lead with, I guess I'll end with a final fact that I think everyone, needs to hear. And Terry, I love that you're doing sort of a financial aid sort of experience for families. What I've been doing today, and I'm outlining the rest of my night tonight, and it's already, 10:30 at night here. I got a long night in front of me, is, acknowledging that, yes, it's my job to deliver a smart, talented, diverse cohort of new students at Bantams at Trinity, or the Trinity Bantams, to the faculty. But that class of students also needs to be a solvent one. Then I need to deliver that to the president and the board of trustees. So there are bottom lines that I need to manage. And, right now I'm sort of beginning to forecast and take a look at how this past first year class that landed at Trinity, it's 592 kids coming from 46 countries and 38 states. It meets all the priorities, in terms of dimension, diversity, talent, from Libya to Long Island, from Saipan to San Francisco. Like, these kids are rolling in from everywhere in this awesome class. But, it landed with a bottom line that, didn't meet some of our goals. And, more than you want to know, as an enrollment manager, like, I'm in the mix of beginning to forecast of how do we move forward in a way that's productive and sustainable for the college. My teammates and I are responsible for deploying, over $80 million in institutional dollars to about 60% of our population each and every year. Add another 50 million on top of federal and state dollars. Like, we are responsible for, deploying resources to do the work that we need to do. But this fact that I want to share here is these colleges are huge investments to be made. They're worth every penny. Okay. But, understand that these are big investments. And as you are sort of rounding the turn and the final turn of this college search, I'm hoping that, as families, you've begun to think about, like, what can we afford to invest in this experience? What can we afford, but also what are we willing to afford? Because at this price point, sometimes there's a difference there. And, it's important, I would say, more than any other fit, is like the financial fit that you can feel as a family with these awesome colleges and universities. So again, in my mind, it's a joint investment. These institutions like ours are partnering with families to make it affordable. And, at Trinity College and where I worked, we meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. And when there's need demonstrated and we offer admission, we tend to be more affordable than in-state options. So I'm asking families right now, do not shy away from those big, huge, massive price points if financially it's going to be important to you, because we will be more affordable than sometimes the in-state options. So, just have an awareness of that financial fit. And to the young people here, I see a couple of you guys, like, have gratitude for the adults that are supporting you. Your families are making sacrifice to make Dunn possible for you. And I was very fortunate to have a family that made a wonderful independent school experience available to me. I was the third of three, and my dad, a small town pediatrician, my mom, a public school librarian, had the ability to afford experiences for me to have a wonderful education. But, when it came time for me to go to college, like, it was a significant stretch for them. They were in that funny little donut hole where they could afford it, but just barely. And, I need to sort of share the story, which I share every now and then, is like, I'm 46 years old, and about, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, I got an email from my dad that said, "Done." I wrote back to him and said, "Dad, done? What do you mean done?" He's like, "I just finished paying off Bowdoin." And I'm like, what? So at that moment, again, as a almost middle-aged guy, like I was approaching 40 years old, I realized that at that moment, the choices my parents made on my behalf 20 years ago, now it's 20, 25, almost 30 years ago, have completely limited their choices in retirement. Like I get that. I know that now. I wish I was more aware of that then. So for the young people here, have gratitude and recognize that, again, I'm going to do this for my kids. And I know my parents would do it for me again, but just, understand that these are big, big investments to be made. And for the parents and guardians here, make a friend in financial aid. For those, 8 to 10 colleges that your young people are applying to, that's a great role that you can play, is connecting with a financial aid professionals in that space, and do everything you can to meet the deadlines, because they matter. They absolutely do. And there's going to be a lot of strange energy in the financial aid space this year, because that FAFSA that Terry mentioned is supposed to be at October. It's not coming out in October. There's a simplification of the FAFSA that the government still hasn't shared what they're doing, and when they're doing it. So it's going to create some anxiety and energy in the financial aid space, more than there's ever been, at least in my time as a professional. So just know that, just be on your toes and be ready to take action, and be responsive to financial aid offices. But know that, we have professionals who want to be helpful, but you have to raise your hand and reach out for that help and support. But that's one piece of advice I have, is make a friend in financial aid, and don't be quiet about the questions that you have. So in the end, you're not going this alone. Like I said, Terry is one of the best in the land when it comes to supporting families through this whole experience. I love counselors like Terry are ones who recognize that they're not here to, make college happen for you. They're a life coach at a really cool moment in time, in helping you sort of manage this rite of passage in a very productive, worthwhile, thoughtful way that, in my mind, will make you a more conscious, a more aware, a more confident human, and to launch into college with all the right kind of energy behind you. So I'm happy to be available to you, whatever questions you have. I think Terry and I just hit the hour mark, and you're probably getting tired of us. But if I can be helpful if you have questions, you can launch them at us, or you can pop them in the chat, or you can call me anytime.
And I think we can just unmute people too, right? Let's see. Yeah. Or if you want to raise it, I don't know how to see. Hey, Ed, unmute people.
They can unmute themselves. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Or you put stuff in the chat. I'm also looking at the chat. Look at Matt. With Matt. Let's see.
Yeah, what do you want to know? Happy to be an open book.
Here we go.
One thing I want to know is, in trying to convey the how, is it better to just come blatantly out in your essay and go, okay, so this is how I tick, this is who, this is what's going on, or to be very artful about it to get, what do you guys appreciate in that regard? And what do you just like go, and have the eyes rolling?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in my mind, cut to the chase, just bring it. This idea of having to have a hook in your essay to draw us in and weave it all together, like, be concise, be thoughtful with the language that you use and how you share it, but don't overthink it. When it comes to sort of crafting your personal statements and sharing sort of your responses to short answers, just make it yours, make it authentic. And for the adult, hangers on here, like, leave the fingerprints, but take the hands off. It's amazing how many personal statements and short answers I read that have been wordsmithed by middle-aged people.
I think we've all been told that we don't even get to read them. It's only Terry and the
nice.
English teacher.
Yeah. Then I would say, yeah, don't overthink it. To the students, don't overthink it. We are, at Trinity, we have a small applicant pool of 6,000 to 7,000, and we're going to take our time reading them, each and every one of these applications. But still, even then, we're reading 30 to 50 of them in a day. So it's a lot. So you don't need to overdo it by any stretch.
And I think Jordan had a question. Gordon?
Oh, answered.
Oh, okay. Wow, how about that?
How about that? Look at that.
Great job. Um, okay, let's see. No,
Beth.
you're very kind. Thank you.
Beth
Thank
Beth
you.
has her hand up. Or
All
high
right,
five.
go Beth. High five.
Yeah, so I'm just looking up, I'm familiar with the FAFSA opening on October 1st. And then typically it's March being the deadline to complete it. So
Ooh,
I just looked at the, because, correct me if I'm wrong, typically when the FAFSA opens, you want to complete your paperwork as soon as possible because the money is or has been in the past that those who apply sooner are more likely to get more, or
Yeah.
maybe that's incorrect. I don't know, but so I'm looking at the FAFSA, the studentaid.gov, and
it's not available yet, and it's late.
but there,
Right.
but the it must be submitted by June 30th of 2024.
Yeah. So what I'll share is the federal government right now in their work to simplify the FAFSA have are behind the eight ball and haven't delivered in the way that they said they would. It's not going to be available in October. We'll be lucky if it's available in December. And in terms of the submission date, each and every college is going to have its own, you have to meet our deadlines, not the government's deadlines, to get the aid. So, we want a complete financial aid application by our deadlines. And we know the FAFSA is going to be late because of the way that the feds are rolling it out. But colleges like Trinity and like where I've worked in the past that tend to have a lot of resources to disperse. We use what's called an institutional methodology, and most of us use what's called the CSS profile, which is a product of the College Board that is essentially sort of the routing our financial aid application, and it's a little more intrusive than the FAFSA, but it gets more into assets and all the other sort of information that will help us understand of the ability to afford this education for that next year. So the FAFSA, it's going to come out when it comes out, and we're going to get it when we get it. But it's important you meet the college deadlines, not necessarily what's outlined on the government's website. So there are a lot of really good resources that colleges have for you to get a sense of what you might be awarded. By law, each and every college needs to have what's called a net price calculator, where it's a little more intrusive. You'll need to have a couple of tax forms to sort of fully fill it out in a way. But if you don't own a business or don't run a farm, it's not very complicated. You can get good information from the net price calculator. If it's a divorce separated situation, that can be a little more challenging for the NPC to sort of give you the output that is true. But it's important to fill it out thoughtfully and do that well, because it's sort of garbage in, garbage out. But a lot of colleges like us also have what's called My Intuition, which is a much simpler cost estimator. I would go on to myintuition.org. There are a lot of great colleges. Trinity's not there yet. We're working on it. But that's where it asks between 6 and 7 questions that most adults have these answers in their head, and it'll give you within a matter of minutes a sense of what your cost will be at that college and what you can expect in terms of grant aid and loans. Some might factor in merit-based dollars, others might not. But anyway, I think that's probably one of the best resources I can leave you with is myintuition.org, and to sort of look at some cost estimators and get a sense of what colleges like us that are very well resourced can afford to package into financial aid awards.
So just to follow up, so California has the Cal grant requires a submission by March 2nd.
correct.
So that's in addition to NASA.
That's in addition to other types of aid and things like that. So there's also an income threshold on that Cal grant. There's certain parameters that that also are going to come into play. So a lot of people qualify for it, but there is an income ceiling on that for a family.
Okay.
Um,
So that's
and
if
just
you're a
wanna-
California resident. So if you're a
you have to be a
student,
California resident. Yes.
so typically, is there anything that a student, an out-of-state student can qualify for money when they're applying to an out-of-state college or not?
Well, like there are some things, and like we'll be talking about that for you guys, I think, next year too. But just generally, like here in the West, we have the Western Undergraduate Exchange, which is a tuition exchange within the Western schools, public universities. But in terms of grants, these are state grants that are for those state residents, right? So generally, a big grant like Cal Grant, that like other states aren't going to have them for out-of-state students generally. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Go
vast
ahead.
majority of our packages are made up with our institutional dollars. We're awarding Trinity dollars, to our students. If a student qualifies for federal dollars for the Pell Grant, we'll award that, on behalf of the feds. We just dispersed $2 million of federal money just yesterday to our returning students. Adding the federal dollars and the state dollars, into the mix for those who qualify for them. But for colleges like Trinity and even big public universities, for out-of-state students, it's mostly institutional dollars.
There was a question too about CSS and deadline. So when it comes to any of these financial forms, I always, my deadline that I recommend is when the student is filing that application, file your financial aid paperwork at the same time. That way, that you've got everything going. Well, they might say, oh, it's not due until March. And I'm like, no, like we need, because I know that in the admissions office, like we're trying to figure out a financial aid package to send you to, and I don't want to have a lot of guesswork that has to happen. So let's get it all out there at the same time and make it easy for everybody. So someone said, I have a question about strategically discovering unheard of colleges. Well,
like
that's
that.
kind of my job, I think, though,
Yeah.
too, because and I think it's always important to think about, like, why have we heard of certain colleges, right?
Yeah.
Often it's because you've got a big football team or something like that, and that's how they've been in the news. And that there are so many schools. Listen, Ed